Welcome to the Own It Powercast, the place to be when you get serious about making big changes and accelerating growth in your life and in your relationships. Finally create the life you've always wanted, living life on your own terms. Learn how to take your fear and turn it into powerful choices that will create sustained change. Now your host, Mary Baker.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Own It Powercast, a place where you can come to get what you need to move yourself forward. Hey, it's Mary Baker, and welcome to episode 65, the types of anxiety. So as you know, all month we're going to be talking about anxiety and stress, how to cope, and how to heal. This week, I wanted to talk about the different kinds of anxiety that one can struggle from. And I'm not going to dive in deep about the clinical side of this. I think that would deserve its own episode in and of itself. Instead, we're going to mention them, we're going to talk about them, and you can always Google the rest as you need to. And some of these you may be more familiar with than others. The first one is called generalized anxiety disorder. And that just means it's chronic. Some people call it low level, but you feel excessive, unrealistic worry and tension with little or no reason. So you worry about money and you worry about people's safety and you worry about your day going well and you worry about everything and anything. And it becomes your norm. Generalized anxiety can also go hand in hand with other forms of anxiety. In fact, a lot of these people will have more than one at a time. One could be predominant, like you could have generalized anxiety and then panic attacks here and there, that kind of thing. So generalized anxiety means I kind of operate on a level of worry for the most part, okay? And again, this is chronic and it usually runs throughout someone's life, but it can also, especially for women, really rear its head later in life, especially after big stressors have come about or bad things have happened. So the next one is panic disorder. You know, that's that sudden intense fear that brings on a panic attack. And during a panic attack, it feels like you can't breathe. You may break out in a sweat. You may have chest pains. They often feel like one is having a heart attack. That's what clients have shared with me. Because you have a pounding heartbeat, like palpitations. You may feel like you can't breathe or like you're choking. You can feel dizzy. You can feel numb. Everyone is different, though, so just because your symptoms aren't on this list, it doesn't mean you're not feeling panic, okay? These can come on out of the blue. You can connect them to an event, but oftentimes, ironically, folks will have panic attacks when everything is calm. When they're laying down at night, when they finally take a day off or go on vacation, when things are settled. I wonder if that isn't because the rest of the day, the rest of the week, they're so focused on doing and putting out fires and things like that, that they're distracted from the down deep anxiety that's happening. I also see a direct correlation between folks having panic attacks and having a hard time dealing with an emotional issue that they're not ready to confront because it's a very difficult one. The outcomes usually can be scary, or maybe there aren't any good outcomes in their perception, things like that. So panic disorder can go along with other forms of anxiety. It often does. And it's a continuum. You could maybe have a panic attack once a year, or you could have them a lot more often. Okay. Social anxiety disorder, also called social phobia, which I think is a bit strong for most people. I mean, some people are just terrified of people. But again, I want you to think about these things on a continuum of horrible to more benign. This is when you feel overwhelming worry and self-consciousness about everyday social situations, meeting new people, worrying about people judging you, being embarrassed or ridiculed. Public speaking is a big one here. Maybe going to a party where you don't know folks, walking into a new situation of peers who could challenge you. I think social anxiety has more to do with self-esteem than having a biochemical anxiety issue. That's just me. Others argue with me. But when I sit with folks and listen to them long enough, I hear 10 times out of 10 that they also struggle with self-confidence and self-worth. And there's a lot of woundedness there and shame-based anxiety. The thing is the fear is when you walk into a room is that people are going to see right through you or see inside of you and find something that they don't like and reject you because maybe you're not happy with what's there. Conversely, when you start getting that together and get a lot of self-acceptance going and healing some old wounds, which is a big part of it, which is why we've done several episodes on grieving childhood pain, you can walk into a room and that's not your first thought. Actually, you become more interested in meeting new people and connecting and having a good time. So intimacy is into me see. Your fear is that people are going to reject who you are. Specific phobias, the intense fear of a specific object or situation. There's a million different types of phobias. Very common ones are fear of heights or fear of flying, fear of snakes, fear of spiders. But the fear goes beyond what's appropriate, and it may cause you to avoid ordinary situations. I mean, with anxiety, the deal is it's however much it gets in the way of your life. That's what I want you to think about. Then there's agoraphobia. That's when you have an intense fear of being in a place where it seems hard to escape or get help if an emergency occurs. For example, you might feel anxious or panicky on an airplane, on public transportation, standing in a crowd. Agoraphobia eventually can lead you to not leaving the house. I think most people don't start there. They may start with one thing at a time, like maybe stop taking the subway, maybe not taking public transportation, avoiding shopping malls, things like that, and eventually making the box smaller and smaller and smaller, and they feel safer, quote unquote, or they think they do, staying home and avoiding danger. Separation anxiety is another one, and this is mainly little kids. But they're not the only ones who feel scared or anxious when a loved one leaves. You can feel very anxious and fearful when a person you're close with leaves your sight if you've just gone through a scary event or a trauma or a loss or a medical issue. You might worry that something bad may happen to them when they leave the house, when they get in the car, when they travel through a storm, things like that. So separation anxiety. The fear, the perception that if they're not in your sight, that they're not going to be safe or you're not going to be safe. And finally, PTSD. And that's a big one that I think we need to be talking more about. And not just because our military folks are struggling with multiple tours and the horrific things that they're seeing, but also the natural disasters and the horrific events in the news, the school shootings. All that stuff is so traumatic. I think since 9/11, the anxiety in our world has just gone up exponentially, and rightly so. Post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, can develop after you're exposed to a very terrifying event, an event that, in your perception, could have been life or death. Okay, physical harm occurred to you or was threatened, violent personal assaults, natural human-caused disasters, accidents, military combat. And I would add, what we're looking at, but I think we need to look at a little more deeply, is the lower level chronic chaos that a child can grow up with parents fighting constantly, or they never knew when that was going to happen, right? So all of that anxiety, the eggshells on the floor, not being able to relax and trust is the key element here. Maybe there was physical abuse. Maybe you never knew when mom was going to drink and rage, or even if it wasn't violent or loud, something bad would happen. And so you had to remain on high alert. And it was hard to trust. A lot of irritability in kids, a lot of anger, a lot of depression, lots and lots of anxiety. Physical abuse, sexual abuse, even if it happened outside of the home, absolutely creates anxiety. What we do know now about anxiety disorders, or just struggling with anxiety, is that staying safe or trying to maintain control only makes your anxiety deepen over time and grow. And I think the worse your life will become, because it'll become more restrictive, you'll have to avoid more and more things, and you become a hostage. You become enveloped in that. Staying safe is not the answer. And I'm not talking about right after a trauma. Yes, I think you need 5 locks on your door and people to come stay with you for a week. Absolutely. Just to calm down your brain. But I mean, going forward in a chronic fashion, I think we need to learn to manage our anxiety rather than hide from it or run from it or try to medicate it away. Because here's the thing, and you may know people who struggle with this, or this might be you become even more obsessed about the fear that you aren't emotionally present. Your work and your relationships are going to suffer, and it takes a huge physical toll. I mean, we can't forget that. All the physical tolls it takes on people, from lack of sleep is a big one, and that creates its own cascading effects on your blood sugar, your weight, your nutrition, your organs, your heart, blood pressure, all of those things. So this is not without consequence. Okay, so how do we go about healing some of this, right? Well, first I want to mention that if your anxiety is severe, like where you're having panic attacks or you're having severe symptoms of PTSD, I would strongly encourage you to get some help around that and not try to heal that by yourself. Probably going to need some good therapy, possibly some medications, although I do want to advise against any of the addictive benzodiazepines that you would take every day, because those things are so addictive and the withdrawal of them can be very nasty and create rebound anxiety. I have watched clients go through that. I would not wish that on anyone. Plus, here's my argument. It doesn't get to the core of the anxiety of the issues. Meds are for symptoms, not causes. Also, there are other techniques such as EMDR, which is great, hypnosis, and meditation that can help long term. So, sometimes if it's really acute, you may need some medication to help you off the ledge, right? Help you function. I just want you to think of long term, how do you really learn to mitigate the fear and heal some of it? Because I think that, the general and the social anxiety, I think can be helped behaviorally for the most part. The shift, I think, is so important, is one from where anxiety is a compulsion, right? You're not even thinking about it half the time. It's not mindful. It's bigger than you. It's out there. It's not inside. We feel like it's inside, but it's not. Our perception is our anxiety is bigger than us. We can't help but text someone for the 5th time because we haven't heard from them. You can't not. I mean, that's what compulsion is all about. I can't help myself is what people say. I can't not. I don't have any healthy control over it. When you shift into choice, when you shift into how you're feeling right now you're here. You're here in the moment. I watch people also move towards anger, healthy anger or frustration, because now you're in a place of choice. You are present, you're here, and yep, you got this. Do you see the difference? If I am anxious, I do not feel empowered at all. I feel like the power is outside of me and there's something big and bad that's going to get me. And I can't control it. I'm actually just trying to run from it, right? Trying to stay safe, trying to avoid the stimuli, avoid the danger at all cost. But we know that that is not the answer. The answer is getting into choice. What do you want? How do you want to manage this? Bringing the power back to yourself. One of the first things that we can do is write down and talk to safe people about what anxiety is costing you, like really, the stress, the lost opportunities for better work, better relationships. It's probably keeping you from taking a risk that would lead you towards a happier life. Maybe asking for a raise, maybe moving across the country, maybe leaving this bad relationship, maybe saying no to family members. It's really important that we get gut level honest with ourselves at what the fear has kept us from doing and how it has kept us from living. The first indication that you want to stop living in fear is when you start to feel frustrated or pissed. Now, you're probably going to start being frustrated or pissed at people out there and circumstances out there outside of your control, and that's okay. Okay, we can start there. We're like, I can't believe they, and can you believe they did that, and why won't they, and all that stuff. That's okay. I want you to bring it back to yourself, because right now, the only thing that's strong enough to beat down your anxiety, that is holding you back from who you're supposed to be, is anger and choice. Here is where the freedom and the strength is. And okay, so long term, like we've talked about before, you don't want to walk around pissed off and, you're a hair trigger and you have to get mad in order to ask for what you need and set a boundary and say F this. I mean, we've all been there. We've all had our moments, but we don't want to live like that because that's really reactive, right? That's not empowering. That's not being empowered. So first, what I want you to do is do the no and the hell no. Do the no and the hell no. And give a strong why. Why no? Why no more? In other words, hell no, I won't let this anxiety rob me of what I need and what I deserve. I've done it long enough and I'm done. Again, I want you to really tap into what you have missed out on, what you've been robbed of. No, I'm not willing to be a hostage to this fear anymore. Okay? Now, we're not negating that you have the fear, because I think that's silly. I think the more you try to not be afraid, the more afraid you become. No, there's fear there. You're just choosing something is more important. Life is way too short, and the years are flying by. And here's the thing. That's why you see this midlife crisis. That's when people's decision that there's not much time ahead as there is behind them, that becomes more important than the anxiety of stepping out of the box. Because it's getting closer to the 11th hour where there's a sense of urgency, and that's not a bad thing. So writing down, talking to safe people, having them affirm you, like it's okay that you were anxious, and now it's okay that you want to live better. You want calm, you want to venture, you want creativity, you want better relationships, you want better surroundings. You want to take that risk and you want to use your gifts. The next thing is I want you to think about the box that you've created, that you've been living in. I want you to make it out of rubber and not concrete, okay? In other words, it's expandable. It can move around. We can stretch it. It's great. It can grow. It can grow a little bit at a time. I think we should start small. I think you should notice what you can see yourself doing differently already, because, oftentimes you're already doing things and you don't even notice it until somebody points it out, or you happen to walk by and say, look at that. I didn't realize I was already starting to do that. And most importantly, I want you to sit with the positive feelings, like pat yourself on the back and feel how great it feels to do something different, to take a risk, to approach something, to confront someone, to confront yourself. I also think it's really important to have healthy mirroring from healthy folks, like we've talked about, who can mirror back and say, look what you're doing. Because you may not see the small steps that you're taking, or you might blow them off and say, that's really not a big deal. I need to be taking these big steps. And what you don't realize is the small steps add up. Pennies add up. Nickels add up. Dimes add up. They don't add up as fast as $20 bills, but they add up. And you keep putting one foot in front of the other, and it will get you to where you want to go. You've heard me say many times, empowerment comes from doing. The small steps you take are still steps in that direction. It's still not standing there, not moving, okay? It's movement. As long as you're doing movement, you're good. Here's the thing. Bigger steps obviously probably feel too traumatic for you to do right now. And every step you take changes you. And it expands you, and it'll help you take the next one and the next one and the next one. It all works as it should. All right. The next thing we really want to do with anxiety is desensitize. You may have heard of desensitization. Okay, that's where you have gradual exposure over time, helps you acclimate slowly and not traumatize yourself and jump back in the box where it's safe. Sometimes this is forced upon us. I mean, COVID is a great example. Not that it doesn't have its own anxiety, but notice how you've acclimated over the last 6 months and you're doing things now that at first were probably very stressful, right? Working from home, working online, changing habits. We had a lot of resistance in the beginning, but now for most of us, leaving the house with a mask on is just like grabbing your keys, right? So we become acclimated to things over time. And so here's what happens. Desensitization changes your perception. One of my favorite people in psych is Erickson. He was famous for pioneering indirect techniques with clients. But he also did some shock therapy, right, which doesn't get as much attention. But here's a story that I heard years ago, and I always remembered it because it has really helped me and helped me help people change their mind about things that they're afraid of. So there was an older gentleman who worked on a top floor of his building, and he used to take the steps because he was terrified of elevators. And so he was getting older. It was becoming far more difficult for him to continue walking up all those steps. So we asked Erickson to help him with his fear. Now, the story goes that in those days, the elevator operators were young girls, and this guy prided himself on being a married man and being quite a prude. So Erickson made special arrangements with one of them in advance, and she agreed to cooperate and thought it would be fun. Erickson said, I went with the gentleman to the elevator. He wasn't afraid of walking into an elevator, but when it started to move, it became unbearable. So I chose a very quiet time, and I had him walk in and out of the elevator. And then at a point where he walked in, I told the girl to close the door and said, let's go up. And then he started to yell and freak out. And I said, what's wrong? He says, the elevator operator wants to kiss you. Shocked, the gentleman said, but I'm a married man. And the girl said, I don't mind. So she walked towards him and he stepped back and said, you start the elevator. So she starts it and she went up to the 4th floor and stopped again between floors. And she said, I have a craving for a kiss. You go about your business, he said. I want this elevator moving, not standing still. And she's like, okay, well, let's go down and start all over again. He's like, no, don't go down, go up, which was the very thing he was afraid of. She started up and then stopped the elevator between floors and said, do you promise you'll ride down in my elevator with me when you're through work? He said, I'll promise anything if you promise not to kiss me. He went up in the elevator, relieved and without fear of the elevator, and could ride from then on. All right. Here's the thing with this gentleman, his fear of cheating on his wife far outweighed and became more important in the moment than his fear of elevators. Plus, my argument is he experienced riding in the elevator and he was actually okay. Erickson knew that. That's why he did this exercise with him. The man shifted toward choice. He prioritized. And at that moment, I think he became more mindful, more intentional, and thus more empowered. He desensitized himself to the idea of riding an elevator because he changed his perception. It's very powerful stuff. So gradual exposure over time can be very helpful and more helpful than avoidance, I think. I think one really powerful tool with anxiety that I've had clients do many times over the years is visualization. We've done a lot of it here on the podcast. I have another one that I want to offer you today because I think visualization is powerful because the subconscious begins to think that it's actually happening or it actually happened. And that is really, really important because as we've talked about, it's going to help you get where you want to be. And it's been your subconscious that's been holding you back because its job is to remember, keep you safe and make you happy. As it becomes more convinced that you are already safe and it's okay and it's cool for you to take that risk, you won't be holding yourself back. So I want you to take a moment. And if you're in a space where you can close your eyes, great. If not, just try to hang with it and see what you can see in your head, all right? And when you do this visualization, I want you to sit with it for a while. And I want you to think about something you have fear around. Like, is it meeting new people? Is it asking for a raise? Is it saying no? Is it worrying about money or your health or both? Is it taking an entrepreneurial risk you've always wanted to take? Maybe go back to school, but that's scary because maybe you didn't do great in high school, that kind of thing. Pick a fear. Now I want you to picture yourself in the near future, and I want you to visualize just how wonderful it will be to get past this fear, to feel relaxed and free. I want you to look around you, and I want you to soak in every detail that you can. Like, where are you? What are you doing? And why is it fabulous? Why does it feel great? Why are you so happy and proud of yourself? You know, it's exciting, it's joyful, it's content. You know, you feel like you are where you were always meant to be, and you're so proud of yourself for finally overcoming your fear because you did it. So now look around at your life. How is it different? You know, notice the ripple effects in all the other areas too. What about your relationships? Are they better, more fun? Is there more creativity in your life? Where's your why? Why does this matter so much? Why has it always mattered to you? If you can, say that meaning right now out loud. And if you can't, say it quietly in your heart. Why? Why is this so powerful? Soak all of it in, and I want you to revel in it. Take a big, deep breath in and one out. It's so damn real you can taste it. Isn't this wonderful? You made it to the other side. And guess what? It's great. It's full of what you really want. All right, stay here and get intentional right now. And I want you to say, either out loud or in your heart, I am committed to moving toward what I truly need in my life to feel okay. I will not let anxiety rob me anymore of the wonderful things I want and need for my life. My why and my meaning is so much stronger than my fear. So much stronger. Fear is perception, and I can change my perceptions by choosing to focus on my choices, what I can do today. And even though I'm just starting out, each step brings me closer. Okay. So what did you see? What did you experience? Had you maybe done this before in different ways when you daydreamed? My encouragement is do this often. It's recommended at least once or twice a day to take a moment by yourself. I think it's really powerful because, again, choice is the only thing bigger than fear and the only way out of fear in my mind. As you do all this work, you'll notice your perceptions and your beliefs are going to start changing over time because they need to. You know, like we've talked about before, experiential data becomes that proof that you need to change your mind. Evidence is best, and evidence is usually what we need in order to do that. You're going to begin to expand because your mind is going to be open to more. Growth begets growth, as you always hear me say. And what's really cool, and I think really reassuring, is that this gets exciting to think about, because here's why. You're reducing the shitty. You're reducing the feeling not good enough that you've been feeling around letting yourself down, because as you probably recognize now, this ain't about anybody else, is it? And it never was. It never was. It's been about you and yourself. In fact, I've sat with people who, when they finally confronted something, finally took a chance, finally took a risk, and it was okay, their panic attacks went away. They started setting boundaries. They started saying no, which, by the way, folks, helps us feel safer and more grounded. When we don't have boundaries in our life, which we'll talk about in one of the upcoming episodes, that's where you see lots of anxiety. And boy, you can understand, right? So today I did a broad brush of the different types of anxiety, from panic to just social anxiety and everything in between. And although I agree you might need some clinical help or meds if it's in a really acute state, I believe you can make lasting changes in your life by intending and beginning to create the life that you want. Even if you're taking baby steps, it's still going to feel a hell of a lot better than it does now. One of my friend's favorite quotes is, "The best way through fear is action." Don't let anxiety rob you of a life that you deserve. It is such a soul killer. I'd rather you be pissed off for 6 months and determined than be anxious and miserable. For now, I just want you to focus on the good that you want on the other side. Keep doing that. You don't even have to know exactly how you're going to get there. Those are just details. Believe me, if you focus on that finish line, it will begin to pull you forward. It always does. All right. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope this was insightful and helpful. May you stay healthy and grounded and calm. Hold on to hope. Focus on the good in yourself and the good that you can find in others and in the world today. It's out there. Be sure to check the show notes at ownitpowercast.com and sign up for the newsletter each Tuesday if you don't already get it. This week, I hope you take some time, practice visualizing the life that you really want, keep getting more in touch with how you feel, and focus on what you can choose and what you can control. And if you found this helpful, please pass it along to others who may benefit too. Because remember, we're here to support each other. So pay it forward, keep focusing on you, and I'll see you next time.
We hope you took away some useful insights and tools you could begin using right away. If you did, please leave a positive review and share on your social media. Because could you imagine if everyone in your life really got it together? Remember, own it now, so you can really own it later.